I love giving talks. It's the thing that I do for a living. Gardener's Question Time is I'm now coming up to 30 years this year on it. And the thing I love about it so much is that people ask us questions. You know, many of us experts, happy to go out and talk. Many of them will give the same talk year after year after year, but they don't very good in the questions. I love the questions, because when you stop talking and listen, you actually start to learn something. And the marvelous thing, you know, when I went on Gardener's Question Time originally, I was nowhere near as knowledgeable as I am now. But sitting there with the other experts, listening to their answers, you suddenly realize that gardening is not one way. It's a whole series of different approaches. And I think that's what makes it so wonderful. Anyway, coming back to the talks, as you may have noticed, I've got a whole series. The one that I recommend most is no work gardening, because this is what I say. People think of gardening as a series of chores. It's been put forward like that. Most of it is correct. In the same way that if you asked Michael Schumacher, how do you pass cars, he would say how he does it on the Nürburgring. He wouldn't actually say mirror signal maneuver, which is what you need to pass the test. And this is the problem in gardening. Most of the books and much of the advice was written by head gardeners.
Yeah.
This infers under gardeners. And indeed, many of my talks, I welcome them and say, it's nice to see we have some head gardeners in tonight. And thank you for bringing your husbands. It's about the state of it, and quite often. Yeah. Anyway, what is lovely to see is that what I do is in no work, I take a lot of the conventional gardening ideas of what we're supposed to do and just point out that they are correct if you happen to be the original gardener who wrote it, rather than the person we are today. So, for example, if you want to grow a grapevine, now, I've grown over 40 here in Norfolk, of which maybe half a dozen I'd recommend for outside, maybe 2. Seagarib and Boskoop Glory if you want to grow an outside one. However, if you want to grow a really tasty, luscious one, then you need to grow them under cover. All the books up till now will tell you either grow them inside, train them up, or plant them outside, bring them in through a hole, and then train them up.
Yeah.
What they don't say is that when this was written, the greenhouse was 40 feet long and 15 foot wide. Now you're in something 10 feet long and 6 foot wide, and you can't even get a decent tomato plant in there. You're trying to put something in there that is like a wisteria on steroids. Yeah. So, of course, it can be done, but it doesn't work very well. What I suggest is they use what's called Rivers. Well, he actually did it the other way. Rivers was a nurseryman in Sawbridgeworth, and he was Victorian. So he realized you only needed things under cover for a short while, not all the year round. They didn't get so many pests and diseases. So he designed huge greenhouses on railway tracks. He could push over his trees. This is a bit difficult for most of us. So I go to the other way, which is his orchard house method using containerized plants. So you put your grapevine in a big tub, you can move on a sack barrow. You put your orange trees in the same way, you bring them in. Well, when you bring your oranges in, or your lemons in, they're in for the winter. They go out in the spring. Early in the year, you bring your grapevines, your peaches, your apricots in. It all gets a bit crowded. Then, as they go out in the spring, the grapevines have all the space. They think they're in the south of France. They come into growth early. Seagarib, one I'd recommend for outside. Absolutely delicious, lovely muscat-flavored little red berries. That's cropping outside by the end of August, which is very fast in England. However, in tubs brought in February, it'll be cropping in June. This means you're eating it for more months of the year. And the only effort is you have to carry the tub in and out with a sack barrow.
Bob, so can I ask, kind of, is that because kind of almost we look at gardening kind of with fear, and so we're not prepared to like make up ways to do stuff, which because we
exactly.
Like, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if we
there's 100 wrong ways.
Right, yes.
They'll all sort of work.
But we can't kind of we'd be frowned on by the gardening community if we don't do what we're told to do.
Some of the old boys, and I must say I'm getting there myself now. I mean, the old books on pruning will always say, "Don't turn it into a lollipop on a stick."
Yes.
Why not?
Yes.
Why not? If that's what you like, fine. It's the books were written mainly because they had to keep the boss happy.
Right.
You often see in books on hoeing, for example, you're meant to work backwards. Have you ever tried hoeing working backwards? I prefer falling over for when I've had my cider. Right. The reason was so they didn't leave footprints, because they didn't want to see footprints. And they were also made to wear sacks on their feet and on the wheelbarrow wheels so they didn't make any noise. And this is the problem. A lot of the books were written back then. The advice is not wrong.
Yeah.
But so supposing you decide it, you love leeks. Now, maybe not, maybe you do. Have you ever tried a leek boiled in chicken stock with a little parsley and then served cold in a vinaigrette? Absolutely. Delicious. Got it from France. So I love big fat leeks.
Yeah.
I tried to grow them here in East Anglia in the ground. It doesn't work. Even if you follow all the instructions in the book, dig a trench, fill it with manure, keep it wet. The soil's so dry it sucks the water out. So it's better to grow them in big containers. Much easier.
Yeah.
And this is what I've done. I've spent 40 years trying to work out what works. The problem always is we do what Dad did.
Yeah.
Or we follow the advice on the TV. And I'm not saying that the TV gardeners aren't wrong, but often they're quoting what the head gardener told them, which was to produce something the head gardener needed to send up to the big house. For instance, if you want leeks, do you want leeks that are champion leeks? Or yes, we'd all love to show them off to our friends and neighbours, wouldn't we? But what you really want are leeks the size of Tesco's you can grow in 5 minutes work a year. That's what I'm aiming at.
Are there, like, you're a well-travelled man who's seen all different countries and are there countries who do this better than we do? Are they kind of?
Oh yes, around the world, everything has grown better somewhere. I mean, I'd love to go and find the best pineapples in the world, the best watermelons in the world. I think I know where to go. Just can't stand the plane flights anymore. In fact, I much prefer I started doing gardening cruises, and I much prefer those. It's civilized. When you arrive at the cruise ship, everything started. You don't have another 5 hours to mess around farting around in the airport. Really brilliant.
Is there stuff we could be learning from those countries about how better we do it?
Oh, absolutely. And this is the thing, there's gardeners, you start with something you like, and then you start using other methods on it till you find out what really works really well for you. The problem is we all take on too much. And again, we're encouraged to have these Chelsea gardens. We're encouraged to have vegetable gardens that are ready for show. You know, it actually helps if you don't like parsnips, Brussels sprouts, and beetroot, because then you have to grow a row of each of them, or the good old boys won't reckon you're a real gardener. But if you don't like them, you won't spoil it by taking one out of the row, which is really what it seems to be about on many allotments. It's producing the appearance. And again, I'm trying to get back all the time to practicalities. How can you actually make this easier on yourself? And don't grow, you know, there's a lot of pressure nowadays for growing things that are healthy.
Yes.
Did you know there's no nutritional value whatsoever in a row of spinach?
Oh, really?
No, you've got to cut it and eat it. You've got to cut it and eat it.
Okay.
Trouble is we grow the stuff and we don't really like it. We don't take it home, but at the end of the year, it goes into the compost heap. One of the things I love, and this is a lovely quote, is be a vegetable grower. You bury your mistakes every year.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's no problem with it. So sometimes something fails. Doesn't matter. The point is, are you getting what you wanted? Are you doing it a way that makes it easier for you? You see, the books all make you feel guilty if you don't achieve great success, and success is often what it looks like. No, success is having delicious stuff on your plate. And a simple thing, most of the books, and nearly always, if you're going to start gardening, they immediately start talking about growing vegetables. Nothing wrong with that, except actually, if you're young, about to move home in another 3 or 4 years, about to have children, then actually growing vegetables is rather labor intensive, takes 3 years to get the soil into good heart, and actually it's relatively skilled because you're sowing and planting and weeding and it all needs to be kept up to date. No, stick a fruit cage in. Anybody can make a fruit cage, not difficult. The construction's simple. Put in black currants, red currants, gooseberries. And even if you don't learn to prune them, they'll still fruit. Strawberries. Now, tell me, which is it easier to get down a child of any age up to 80? Another pound of lettuce or another pound of soft fruit?
Right.
Exactly. This is the whole thing is go for what is easier to achieve. And honestly, A soft fruit cage, you can make it look pretty. You could put grapevines around the outside. And you can take it with you, because you can take cuttings from the soft fruit, root them and take them, or dig up the plants and take them to your next house. And this is the thought. You see, none of us move into somewhere and stay there for the next 50 years. Well, some do, but most people move regularly. And so again, the books, the advice is all written as if you are going to be there in perpetuity. No, you're not, you're going to move. And this is what I've been trying to get my head around for the last 40 years, is making gardening something that you can just pick up and do a bit of, not something that you have to actually devote. I now, of course, devote every hour of the day for 40 years to it. Anyway, some of the things that are newer, I've developed a way of making birds' nests, bird boxes, out of papier-mâché. It was actually from a German count called Burlet, who noted that the birds that we like, the little ones, most like a woodpecker's nest. A woodpecker's nest does not resemble a cubical wooden box, right? A bird box is not what they're looking for. They're looking for a hole in a tree. He turned them out of logs with a lathe. Bit difficult. However, I came up with the idea of making them around a former, which can just be a 2-litre plastic bottle, with papier-mâché.
Amazing.
I do a talk on wildlife, which I bring this one out. Now, one of the things about it is, have you got children, Nick?
Yes, I do.
How old are they?
One's 13 and one's 10.
So you would just about trust them to make a bird box with hammer, nails, and saw if you were there with supervision and you had the first aider standing by.
Yes, exactly. The first aider definitely needs.
However, you can have them all making papier-mâché bird boxes from 4 or 5.
Yes.
And so I'm always trying to come up with ideas that work and that are simpler and something that's more practical. One I'd love you to pass on, please. Anyone who's got children at the school probably wants a school garden. If it makes one, it will be in the shade of the trees where nothing bloody grows. Believe me, I've opened enough of these to know. What they need to do is simply go to the local B&Q or similar shed and ask them to sponsor half a dozen wheelbarrows.
Right, yes.
Which cost them 15 quid each.
Yeah.
With half a dozen sacks of compost, drill holes in the wheelbarrows, put the plants in the wheelbarrows, put them in the middle of the playground in the sun, water them, have the kids interested. When they want the area, move them to the side and back into the sun. And then at weekends, they can be wheeled round to somebody local who can water them at the weekend. And at holidays, they go home with the kid who showed the most interest. Much easier than trying to make a piece of ground.
I love it. Bob, I'm really conscious about your time.
I'm taking too much of yours.
No, it's been amazing, and so many great tips there, and just things to be thinking about how we can be more practical, fundamentally. Thank you so much indeed. Have a lovely day, Bob Flowerdew. Always a pleasure to speak, and you take care.
Thank you very much.